Welcome everyone to today's Explainer. We're jumping straight into the digital kingdom of enterprise networks today. Specifically, we're unpacking Chapter 5, the architecture of access, which is all about the foundational nervous system of corporate IT, Microsoft's Active Directory. You know, if you've ever wondered how thousands of computers, users, and security policies are seamlessly managed without total chaos taking over, you're definitely in the right place. We're going to break down exactly how this massive digital infrastructure is built, how it runs, and, most importantly, how we secure it.
To truly wrap our heads around the scale of what we're dealing with today, consider this. Over 90% of enterprise environments globally rely on this single system just to function. It's the beating heart of modern corporate infrastructure. Literally, trying to run a large-scale IT environment without Active Directory wouldn't just be difficult, it would be an absolute impossible nightmare. It's the undisputed #1 skill for Windows system administrators, simply because if this system goes down, the entire company goes offline with it.
Okay, let's dive into this. What exactly is Active Directory, or AD? At its core, it's Microsoft's directory service. Under the hood, it's built on these incredibly robust standard protocols, like LDAP for querying data and Kerberos for highly secure authentication. But functionally, it acts as this ultimate centralized single pane of glass. From just one console, administrators control authentication, meaning who you are, authorization, meaning what you can access, and policy enforcement, the actual rules your computer has to follow, all across a massive Windows network.
All right, let's get into Section 1, the foundation, forests, domains, and OUs.
So to understand how that single pane of glass operates, we really need to build our network city from the ground up. At the very bottom, you have an object. This is your individual user account, your laptop, or maybe a security group. To organize those objects, we put them into OUs, or organizational units. Think of OUs kind of like folders that mirror your company's org chart, giving administrators an easy way to delegate control. All of those OUs live inside a domain. This is your core administrative boundary, something like corp.com, and it's where security policies are enforced. Finally, at the very top of it all, we have the forest. The forest is the outermost security boundary. You can actually have multiple domains existing within a single forest, and they all share a unified blueprint called a schema.
With our structure in place, let's see how this builds into the actual authentication process. When a user object tries to access the network, Active Directory uses Kerberos, which works a lot like a highly secure VIP pass system. Here's how the 5-step process goes down. First, the user logs in at their workstation. Second, the machine silently reaches out to a domain controller's key distribution center. Third, that controller validates the user and issues a ticket granting ticket, or TGT. Fourth, when the user wants to actually access a file share or an app, they present that TGT to request a specific service ticket. And fifth, access is granted. Now, the absolute genius of this dance is that your actual password is never once transmitted over the network. It's just brilliantly secure.
Moving right along to Section 2, the engine, domain controllers, and replication.
But you might be wondering, who's actually checking all these VIP passes? Well, that brings us to our domain controllers. Because most organizations have multiple physical offices, they have multiple controllers that constantly need to communicate with each other. And they do this in two very distinct ways. Intrasite replication happens locally, right within the same physical building or data center. It is built for blistering speed, using uncompressed protocols that trigger incredibly fast, literally just 15 seconds after a change is made. On the flip side, intersite replication happens across global branch offices over WAN links. To save on expensive network bandwidth, this replication is highly compressed and happens on a configurable schedule which defaults to every 180 minutes.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that while most Active Directory data replicates in a multi-master way, meaning pretty much any controller can update it, there are specific, highly critical tasks that can only be handled by a single authority. This is to prevent massive, network-destroying conflicts. We call these the FSMO roles. The PDC emulator is crucial for password changes and time synchronization. The RID master hands out unique identity blocks so no two users ever get the same internal ID. The infrastructure master handles cross-domain updates. The schema master is the one and only server allowed to edit the directory's core blueprint. And lastly, the domain naming master oversees any additions or removals of domains. These single master tasks are totally vital to the network's survival.
Let's move to Section 3, the laws, Group Policy Objects, or GPOs.
So we have the structure and we have the engines, but what about the actual rules? Group policy allows an admin to automatically enforce rules, map network drives, deploy software, and configure security settings on thousands of machines instantly, all from one central console. But think about it. When you have thousands of overlapping rules, how does a single computer know which one to follow? It uses the LSDO processing hierarchy. Policies are applied chronologically in this exact order. Local machine settings go first, then physical site policies, then domain-wide policies, and finally, organizational unit or OU policies. The golden rule you have to remember here is last applied wins. Because OU policies are applied last, they are the most granular and carry the absolute highest precedence, meaning they can easily override a local or domain-level setting.
And while we're on the topic of OUs and policies, we really have to highlight this fundamental rule of system administration. It's a critical, totally network-breaking mistake to confuse an OU with a security boundary. Listen, OUs exist solely to scope group policy and delegate administrative tasks. If you want to control who has access to a highly sensitive HR folder or a finance app, you never, ever rely on an OU. You always use security groups, for sure.
Onward to Section 4, the MAP DNS integration.
Here's the harsh reality. None of these policies, authentications, or domain controllers matter at all if the computers can't find each other. In Active Directory, DNS isn't just some nice-to-have feature, it is the absolute foundation. If DNS breaks, your machines can't locate domain controllers, users can't log in, replication completely stops, and the network effectively dies right there. Active Directory relies on very specific DNS records called SRV or service location records to keep the network alive in the background. When a machine boots up, it looks for the _LDAP.tcp record to figure out which domain controller it needs to talk to. It queries _Kerberos.tcp to find the key distribution center to get its authentication tickets. And it uses _GC.tcp to find global catalog servers when it needs to search the entire forest. This is the invisible, seamless map keeping the whole shebang connected.
Finally, Section 5, the Vault, securing the AD Kingdom.
We've built the network, we've set the laws, and we've drawn the map. Now, we need to raise the stakes significantly. We're moving into the high-stakes reality of securing the Active Directory infrastructure against catastrophic compromise. Because if an attacker takes down AD, they take down the entire company. To prevent that, enterprise networks use the Microsoft tier model, which breaks the environment down into isolated security zones. Tier 0 is the control plane, domain controllers and core identity systems like your public key infrastructure. If Tier 0 falls, it's game over. Tier 1 contains your standard member servers, like SQL or file servers. And Tier 2, that's where the everyday workstations and laptops live. So, the crucial point is this ironclad rule. Tier 0 and Tier 1 credentials must never be typed into a Tier 2 machine. If a highly privileged administrator logs into a standard laptop, and that laptop happens to be compromised by malware, the attacker instantly harvests those top-tier credentials from memory and takes over the entire domain. No joke.
Of course, securely managing all of this at scale requires the right tools. You just can't rely on clicking through a graphical interface when you have 10,000 employees to manage. Instead, with just one clean, automated line of PowerShell code, an admin can provision a new user, assign their department, force a secure password reset upon their very first login, and enable the account. Rapid, bulk automation like this is really the only way to manage a dynamic Active Directory environment effectively and securely. And you know, that automation ties directly into our most critical security best practices. Let's rapid-fire the actionable checklist for hardening your environment right now. First, use a strict group nesting strategy, often referred to as AGDLP, to keep permissions cleanly separated between accounts, global groups, domain local groups, and permissions. Next, strictly enforce the principle of least privilege. Give people only the exact access they need to do their jobs, and nothing more. For your highly privileged administrators, mandate the use of dedicated Lockdown Privileged Access Workstations, or PAWS. Be sure to add those same admin accounts to the Protected Users group to enforce modern encryption and stop credential caching in its tracks. And finally, constantly audit your environment. Look out for accounts flagged with admin count equals 1, and regularly disable stale, inactive accounts. Attackers absolutely love to exploit those.
So, we've covered the structure, the rules, and the totally vital security practices of the digital kingdom. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a provocative question that challenges the reality of your own environment. Really think about your organization right now. Who currently holds Tier 0 access in your network? And is it possible their credentials are accidentally cached on a vulnerable Tier 2 workstation at this very moment? It's a high-stakes question for sure, but knowing the answer might just save your entire digital architecture. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.